morning med- morning meditations with Dan Stratton. I want to just thank you for tuning in. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. I also want to encourage you to make comments or ask questions. If you watch this later in the day, sometimes we rebroadcast this. This is live right now. So if you watch this later in the day and you ask a question, I will get back to you and we'll have a dialogue. It's important that we see these teachings as dialogue. It's important, especially with what I'm going to talk about today, and get some interaction going. I got a lot going on coming up in the month of March, and everywhere I go, it's all about listening. It's all about hearing what people are going through, what people need, how I can help them. So that's really what I do, like every day, all day. My first trip will be down to the Parchman prisons. I'll be there for 3 days speaking. Takes about 4 days to do 3 days with all the travel and the different things. And Parchman is in Mississippi. It's a very large prison system, and it's also run by some really cool people. A guy named Burl Cain he's the commissioner for all of the Mississippi prison systems, but he's not having the same kind of reception that he had in Louisiana. In Louisiana, he was given kind of carte blanche to bring in the teachings and the services that he knew would work, and he did a great job in Angola prison, which was in Louisiana, very high security, where all the worst offenders go, the murderers, the rapists, the worst offenders, the repeat offenders. And in Parchman is very much the same. But in Mississippi, they're so secularized that he is being fought, except for in the one prison in Parchman. So he has me come down to help his leaders, to train his leaders, and to train his leaders really to serve the inmate population, to see that they get rehabilitated, to see that they are cared for. Many of these men and women will never get out of prison, but we still treat them as human beings. We treat them as people with a future, people who can still make impact and do those things. So that'll be my first week of March. And then the second week, I'll be heading down to work with one of my top people in my life. And she is an intellectual property lawyer. She's also a trained engineer, degreed engineer, an author, a speaker, a professor now at High Point University. Her teams, and we'll be talking about how we can be more creative, how we can enjoy our jobs more, how we can serve her clients better. And all of her clients are inventors. All of her clients are innovators, very creative people with staffs and needs, because all entrepreneurs need all sorts of things. They need support, they need finance, they need all sorts of things. So we're always thinking about how we can serve her clients. So I'll be with her for 2 days. And then as we move through the month, I'll be going to the nation, the communist nation just south of Florida. I don't want to say the name because I get shut down, but you can look it up. And we'll be there for 4 days. We've been there for 7.5 years, and we're planning to be there for at least another 7.5. And we were able to buy them a farm. We were able to, we just recently sent them the finances so that they could get a 15-passenger van. Their churches have grown. They're feeding almost 2,000 people every single day from the produce from the farm, and also from the giving that we bring. The nation there is struggling, and actually the infrastructure is crumbling. So where before their socialistic system, they tried to at least provide the basics. They can't even provide basics now to the people, but our churches there are now providing those basics. So it's very cool. And so it's exciting And I tell you all of this because this has been a product of what I'm going to talk about today. And this is called Do What's Right Because It's Right, and then Do It Right. So each and every day for the last 10 years, I've written about and I've thought about and I think about the concept of serving, the concept of helping people, the concept of loving people. And so I ask myself on a daily basis, what can I do better? How can I help better? How can I serve better? How can I love my wife better? How can I love my daughter better, my grandson better, my son-in-law better? How can I love my church members better? How can I love my friends better? When you ask that question and you wait for the answer, you will get an answer. And so over the years, these things come to me, and the better you get at it, the more you begin to think about and create around the concept of how can I help somebody. And then you learn over time. So last week, and you can go back in the archives and pick it up, I talked about doing what's right because it's right, and then doing it right. Okay, so but mainly I talked about doing what's right. How do you know what's right? How do you know what is the right thing to do? And then how do you do it right? Because that's what I wanted to talk about the second half of that today. So doing what's right because it's right, doing what's right because it's right. So you have to kind of have a good sense of how do you get to doing what's right. So I always work with the person that I want to help or the action that I want to take. And I want to make sure that the person I'm helping, we're back in the doing what's right part because it's right. And I need to get their permission because what's right to me might not be right to them. And even if what's right to me and it's right to them, but if they don't like the method that I use, then it's still kind of wrong. So I got to work on that. And so that's really what I want to talk about today. So doing what's right, my compass is the Bible. My compass is even inside the Bible are the words of Jesus in the red letters of the translations. We highlight the words of Jesus in red letters in the Gospels and other places, and so I use those teachings to guide me into doing what's right. I see the parable of the Good Samaritan. You don't walk by somebody when they're in a ditch. You get in the ditch with them, and you walk with them until they're whole. You don't just throw $10 down into the ditch and say, "Hey, buddy, clean yourself up. Get a meal." You actually get in there a little bit and you help them. The concept of reaching out. So I use some phraseology or some uh, ideology, I guess, philosophy. I use the concept of how may we serve you, and I say it that way because every one of those words has a question in it. How may we serve you? And so when I approach somebody to help them to do something right on their behalf, I ask them, how would you like me to help you? And then we talk about that a little bit. Then I say, may I? Do you give me permission? And then I go to the third one, which is we, and I say, well, I'm not going to be doing it by myself. I might not be able to do all that you require to really get out of this ditch alone. So, I represent my friends, I represent my resources. So that's a we. And then serve. I'm not going to just lecture you. I'm not going to direct you. I'm going to be here to support you to get all the way through. And then the last one is you. You know, you. Are you cool with this? The concept of, who are you? Having an idea, and then for that person to say yes, that's cool. So I know I've taught on that before on morning motivations, so that's why I went through that pretty quickly. But these tools really help you to work. Now in my studies, I have come across an ancient teaching by a man by the name of Moses Maimonides. And he wrote what he calls the golden ladder of justice. Some people refer to it as the golden ladder of charity. Okay. And the reason that the Jewish people call it justice because they don't see giving or helping as an optional thing. They see it as duty. It's something you must do. It's something that if you see an issue, you have to do something about it. You can't just walk by. And I think that's important. I think in today's world, uh, with all the social media and all the different things, we can kind of feel like, or TV even, so that we can stand on the outside and that we don't have any responsibility for the world around us. There's a lot of teaching out there about victimhood and that, oh, these things just happen to be, but you can actually make a difference. You can have an effect. You can do what's right. You can really do what's right and then do it right. So when I began to help people over the years, and I've been helping people for a long, long time, I've noticed that sometimes it blows up in my face. I started saying a lot, no good deed goes unpunished. And I don't want that to happen for you. So I want to drop some seeds, some thoughts into your mind today. So there's 8 levels of helping. There's 8 levels of serving. There's 8 levels of giving. And the first level is to give, but to do it reluctantly or with regret. To give, but to do it reluctantly or with regret. That's usually when somebody asks you to do something you don't want to do, but you do it anyway because of the person who's asking you to do it is pressuring you a little bit. So that's giving, but it's not the kind of giving you want to be doing. It's not going to have the kind of results you wanted to have, and it's not really doing it right. The second level is to give cheerfully, happy to do it, but it doesn't really meet the need, not proportionately. And so it's important that it's like clothing a naked man, but all you do is give him a t-shirt. He's completely naked. You give, you're happy to do it. Hey, here's a t-shirt, but it doesn't really help because the man still can't go to work, right? It's not proportional. The third level is to give cheerfully and proportionally, but you have to be asked. You have to be asked. You're not looking for places to help. You're not looking, someone has to remind you to do it. And this is what I've aspired as somebody who helps people. I want to get better at it. So, and I also want to see and really be kind of self-aware and introspective. Am I giving reluctantly? Am I giving cheerfully? Am I giving proportionately? Am I serving reluctantly, cheerfully, proportionally? Do I only serve when somebody comes to me and asks me? So these are the things. The fourth level is to give cheerfully, proportionally, without being asked, but I give it directly into the person's hand, causing them a little bit of embarrassment and shame. Now, this is something that, you really need to think about because you're cheerful, you're thoughtful, so you're proportional. Okay. You're no one's asking you to do it. But then you give to the person, making them feel like they are less than or needy, and it causes them, maybe not outwardly, they may be grateful outwardly, but on the inside, they feel embarrassed. They feel ashamed in a little way. Okay. And so the next level, the fifth level, is to give cheerfully, proactively, proportionally, without being asked and without the giver knowing who is giving him the gift. But the recipient, or actually without the giver doesn't know who he's giving to, but the recipient still knows who's giving it to him. All right. That's very important. That's another one, because what happens is that shame is still there. They still have that shame, especially when they're around that person. I'm going through this quickly, and I think we should do this a little more extensively in the weeks to come. Sixth one is to give cheerfully, proactively, proportionately, without being asked, but the giver knows the recipient, and the recipient does not know the giver. This anonymity doesn't cause shame when that money is coming from some place that doesn't cause shame. It's very important that you start to work through these processes, think through these processes, because you don't want to be in that place for your life where you give causing shame in the person, and that shame turns into a resentment or a resistance towards the giver, towards the giver. Then the seventh one is called the chamber of silence, which is total anonymity. Cheerful, proportionate, proactive, without being asked, but it's almost like it's an environment where people can go get what they need, and people can give generously into that place. It's almost like I visualize it as a wonderful, just kind of a store almost, where it's just a warehouse of resources that people can go into and get what they need. You know, it doesn't work when thieves go in there, but it works when people of integrity go in and get what they need, and it's stocked. It's, you know, it's almost like, you know, the people that are serving in there are, you know, they're just there to facilitate, but the people that come in with needs aren't really being ministered to by them, but by the greater powerful outside of that. And then the eighth one is anticipating need, preventing poverty, preventing suffering through education, infrastructure, and provision, giving to someone so that they never experience a day where they have to raise their hand to ask for charity. So this is what we talk about, and what I think about a lot when I walk through my own inner intentions, my own inner motivations, my own thoughts around helping and giving. I walk through the proportionate, the cheerful, the anonymity. I walk through the anticipation process, whether we're in the prisons or whether we're in the in that nation south of Florida, that communist nation. And when we're doing these things, and to a certain level, I haven't been able to climb the ladder all the way to the top because I'm still involved. I'm still directly involved. A lot of times it's wonderful because the people in these places, because there's always a residual, the effect is ongoing, even when my team isn't there, which is great. So that's when we start moving towards that anonymity. But creating, and I ask this all the time of the leaders, let's get ahead of this. Let's, you know, what are you going to need next year? What are you going to need the year after that? When this happens, what do we need then? And helping people to do this. So I want you to just think about this, maybe even review this a little bit and think about it, ask some questions about it. It's a great thing to dialogue over. In my life, it's funny because when I meet people who are doing some amazing things on a large scale, I one time met a wonderful businessman. He was in his 80s, and he was sharing with us what he was doing in Ghana as he was bringing the internet, and he was bringing uh, stores, and he was bringing hospitals, you know, like clinics in these strip malls that he was building across Ghana. And it's a nation in Africa. And he began to share at the table, you know, the golden ladder of justice, as he called it. He was a Jewish man. And we had the most beautiful discussion around it. And we really thought it through. And then I got to work with him, which was really cool. And because I understood the philosophy, I understood that we didn't want to bring shame to the Ghanaian people. We didn't want to make them feel less than in any way. We wanted to empower them and truly help them. So I hope, you know, in these sessions on morning motivations, they're short, they're to the point, and I hope this helps you in some way, that you can think about these things. As a man thinks in his heart, the Bible says, so is he. What you think about will cause you to speak. And then that's what you'll say. That's what you'll speak about. And then what you speak about and think about is what you're going to do. So think about these things. How can you help some people? How can you love somebody today? You know, how can you really change somebody's life with a little bit of intentional, purposeful thinking? So I wish you the very best. I pray for you today. I'm thankful for that you joined me on the morning motivations with Dan Stratton, and I hope you continue. Hope you watch these. Hope you go back and watch some of the old ones. There's a lot of good stuff out there. God bless you. Have an awesome day.